Thank you, everyone. My name is Pat Ottensmeyer. I am President and Chief Executive Officer of Kansas City Southern, one of North America's large railroads. And I am delighted to have been asked to kick off this remarkable roundtable discussion. My primary role here will be to introduce Ambassador Green, who will introduce the panel and others on the discussion for today. But I would like to make some comments here just about the unique opportunity here in the discussion, literally on the eve of 1 year birthday anniversary of the signing of USMCA. For those of you who don't know Kansas City Southern as well as others, again, we are one of the largest railroads in North America with a significant presence in Mexico. So our business has been very tightly connected to US-Mexico trade since the implementation of NAFTA 27 years ago. We are now in the process of merging with a Canadian national, which is also one of the largest transportation railroad companies in North America. And the combination of Canadian National and Kansas City Southern will create a rail network that is unmatched across North America. And it is our belief that the opportunity for trade growth across all three countries is just a fantastic opportunity for North America, all three countries in North America, to emerge and move forward as an even more powerful trading bloc in the world. And much of the trade relies on infrastructure, and rail infrastructure is a critical part of the backbone of trade across the continent. And the combination of Canadian National and Kansas City Southern will create as I said earlier, an unmatched, first ever truly North American rail network that we think is going to be not only a participant, but a driver of investment across North America and improved supply chains, improved performance and resiliency of supply chains. The presence of USMCA is a significant factor in creating this environment. Trade certainty between the three countries in North America, as well as other factors. Supply chain leaders around the world are looking to de-risk, shrink global supply chains, improve predictability, resilience of supply chains. And we have a fantastic opportunity with USMCA in place and forums like this, where we have open discussion between the leaders of all three countries to focus on issues and align priorities to take advantage of this fantastic opportunity for North America. So with that, I would like to introduce Ambassador Mark Green. Many of you know Ambassador Green has a very distinguished career and has been with the Wilson Center since the beginning of the year. After having spent several years at the McCain Institute and top roles at the International Republican Institute, the Initiative for Global Development, and the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. He also served as U.S. Ambassador to Tanzania and served 4 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives for Wisconsin's 8th District. So Ambassador Green, I'm going to assume that you are, being a Wisconsin native, that you are a Green Bay Packers fan, and with all of these fine witnesses, I would like to extend a personal invitation for you to come to Kansas City on November 7th for the showdown, the rematch of Super Bowl I between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Green Bay Packers. So consider that invitation extended. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Ambassador Mark Green.
Thanks, Pat. We aren't to bring religion into this, which is what we do when we talk about my Green Bay Packers. Thanks for your kind introduction. And seriously, thanks for your great support of NAFTA, USMCA, and the work that we do at the Wilson Center. So, welcome everyone to the Woodrow Wilson Center. Our congressional mandate is directing us to bring together the world of learning and the world of public affairs. I can't think of a more important way that we fulfill that mandate than through our discussions this week on the first anniversary of the U.S.-Mexican-Canadian agreement. And it is an honor to be here with the trade leaders of these three close partners, North American partners and friends. So thanks to COVID-19, USMCA's first year has been, to put it mildly, not one that will soon be forgotten. But it's also proven both the resolve of our nations and our overall dedication to harnessing the might of private enterprise for a brighter, more prosperous future for the entire continent. After a quarter century of success under the North American Free Trade Agreement, the U.S., Mexican, and Canadian leaders worked tirelessly to modernize that agreement and to provide clear and coherent trade rules for sectors and disciplines not covered by NAFTA or the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement that preceded it. No other free trade agreement has been updated in this fashion. When President Trump joined his counterparts in November of 2018 at the signing ceremony, he boasted that USMCA is the largest, most significant, modern, and balanced trade agreement in history. In this case, he may have been right. All three governments should be commended for their vision and their willingness to take on the risk of renegotiation with no guarantee of success, the chance that things could be made worse. That takes courage, that takes principled leadership, and it takes close cooperation and communication among our friends and partners in North America. But we all know the work is far from done. We must continue to educate the public. We must continue to strengthen our mutual trade interests and shore up our economic prospects. Negotiators in this process, as we know, added new chapters on digital trade, small and medium enterprises, regulatory coherence, and competitiveness, to name a few, while also fully incorporating labor and environmental chapters into the new agreement. Our countries also updated rules of origin to ensure that the auto industry, the driver of 25% of North American commerce, could compete in a future electronic vehicle-focused global economy. If anything, the pandemic has reinforced the deeply interconnected nature of our economies and societies. It has shown us the risks of over-reliance on supply chains whose crucial links may run through far-off lands. It is essential that we, government, private sector, and civil society, learn from the pandemic, that we implement plans and policies that will help mitigate the impact of future disruptions, that we recognize the value and potential for nearshoring crucial sectors and important supply chains. We should also seize the opportunity of USMCA's Competitiveness Committee. As we all know, it's an important innovation of the agreement, and it provides an additional tool for the governments to engage with the private sectors and civil society. Earlier this week, we had the opportunity to hear from three business groups about their vision for the committee. And the Wilson Center is eager to support the committee through our scholarship and convening power. Our Canada and Mexico institutes have held over 15 events and published numerous papers about USMCA and the opportunities for enhanced cooperation and commerce within North America. Many of the events and publications occurred under the umbrella of our USMCA working group, which we established about a year ago and about which you will hear more later on. That group brings together policymakers and stakeholders to discuss rules of origin, workforce development, energy, border management, and travel and tourism, among others. It will continue during the agreement's second year to convene and discuss additional chapters and sector discussions in areas like agriculture, financial services, small and medium enterprises, and the digital economy. In doing so, we hope to provide the three governments with actionable recommendations to support rapid resolution of problems and agile responses to opportunities to, again, enhance the economy of no one of us, but all three of us, and in fact, the entire hemisphere. So enough from me. Let's get on to today's important discussion. I am delighted to have the honor to moderate a virtual fireside chat with North America's trade ministers to commemorate USMCA's first birthday. I will invite each of the ministers to make brief opening remarks, and then we'll engage in a conversation about USMCA's achievements, challenges, and potential. First, we will hear from Ambassador Catherine Tai. She is the 19th U.S. Trade Representative, serving as the principal trade advisor, negotiator, and spokesperson on U.S. trade policy. She previously served as the Chief Trade Counsel and Trade Subcommittee Staff Director for the House Ways and Means Committee, where she played a pivotal role in shaping U.S. trade law, including the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Ambassador, I'm turning it over to you for some comments.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Green, for those kind words and the warm introduction. And thank you to the Wilson Center for hosting today's event. It is wonderful to join my friend Secretary Cloutier and Minister Ng as well. I've enjoyed getting to know both of you in our early conversations. It has been a busy month for the Biden-Harris administration on the world stage. At the beginning of the month, Vice President Harris visited Guatemala and Mexico, and a few weeks ago, I joined President Biden in Brussels, where we highlighted the importance of the transatlantic relationship. And tomorrow marks the one-year anniversary of the entry into force of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. This important milestone offers us an opportunity to reflect on the importance of our partnership and commit to advancing a positive economic agenda that lifts up workers and communities in all of our countries. I believe that the USMCA provides us with a framework to advance this agenda. For years, there was broad consensus that the NAFTA needed to be updated and remedied to meet the needs of the 21st century and correct for flaws and breakdowns in the agreement that developed over time. That view was shared by the business community, labor unions, and members of Congress from both parties. The USMCA, as originally negotiated, made some important strides towards achieving the goals of updating and remedying the NAFTA, but still fell short of the standards required to win congressional support. Only with the close partnership with business and labor organizations, and after a most unlikely and topsy-turvy collaboration between congressional Democrats and the Trump administration, did the renegotiated USMCA emerge as a better deal for workers. It also serves as a new model for trade agreements to be able to secure a broad base of support. The USMCA was approved by the US Congress with overwhelming bipartisan majorities and was endorsed by groups ranging from the AFL-CIO to the US Chamber of Commerce. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the commitment of our Mexican and Canadian partners. The process and the final product demonstrated that thoughtful engagement and an openness to creative solutions can lead to better policy. The USMCA now includes the strongest labor and environmental standards in any agreement ever, a new labor-specific enforcement mechanism, and critical changes to intellectual property provisions designed to increase access to affordable medicine for regular people. The USMCA also allows us to revisit parts of the agreement to ensure that it remains relevant as the economy and our world evolve. We should celebrate the USMCA because of what it represents, a renewed commitment by our three countries to pursue negotiations that raise standards and create that race to the top. As President Biden stated at the recent G7 leaders meeting, we will always be more successful if we partner with our allies. Collaboration with Mexico and Canada helps us confront today's challenges and prepare for the challenges we will face in the future. Most importantly, the trust and the relationships that we built in renewing the terms of this agreement will help us to promote the competitiveness of North America and respond to the policies of non-market economies that undercut our businesses and our workers. A good next step in this increased cooperation can be on the issue of forced labor. The USMCA includes a strong obligation to prohibit the importation of goods produced with forced labor. Working together to address this critical economic and moral issue would send a powerful message to the world. While today we are celebrating what we have accomplished with this new agreement, we must also acknowledge that there is more work to do. By continuing our work together, we can build a more competitive and resilient partnership that delivers shared prosperity across this region that is home to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Next, we will hear from Secretary Tatiana Cloutier Carrillo, Mexico's Secretary of the Economy. Secretary Cloutier has spent 12 years working on public policy on the state and municipal level, including as a congresswoman in Mexico's lower house twice. Secretary Cloutier, over to you for some comments.
Muy buenos días, buenas tardes. Me da muchísimo
Good
gusto.
morning, good evening. I'm very pleased to be with you. I want to thank Wilson Center for allowing us to share. We are just about to celebrate the first anniversary of the entry into force of USMCA. I want to thank the presence of the ambassador, our moderator, Mr. Patrick, and the representatives of Helen Brady and Richard Field. Thank you very much for being with us, and my colleagues and colleagues that we have worked a lot, because I took office this year, but we were working together, reviewing all the works in the 11 committees that showed all the progress made in USMCA. For me, this was very important, and to listen about the challenges we have. And as Catherine Tai said, we have a lot of work to do, and as nations. However, this treaty that have been modernized up to par compared to the world, we are able to face the new challenges. And during COVID, it was a very important mechanism that strengthened, as you said before, the commerce was strengthened in some way, and this partnership helped the three countries to face challenges in a different way. I want to make 3 comments. Those are the 3 R's. One of them is the trade reactivation. The other one is economic recovery and the restructuring of value chain. For Mexico, having the celebration of the first anniversary, the commercial environment has allowed a more active dynamism, faster despite the pandemic, I should say that, and allowed Mexico to be positioned as the main commercial partner of the US and the 3rd commercial partner of Canada. Mexico has been consolidated, having today $51 billion in 2020 with the US, and it maintained as an important provider of food to the US, where with access to a healthy and more varied diet, our products were able to be sent to the US through this treaty. Also, the USMCA has been a powerful engine of economic recovery in North America. And despite the pandemic, we were able to face economic consequences, and Mexico is positioned in 9th place among the countries that received a major foreign investment flows. And this has to do with this US USMCA treaty. And for us, I think that we should highlight that USMCA helped our investments with Canada and the US were strengthened. The confidence of this USMCA mechanism was welcome worldwide, but also by investors and our colleagues and workers in the country. The restructuring of supply chain, thanks to USMCA, also were tested during the pandemic. Well, part of what we have done up to date is to share with our counterparties, especially a study by Alonso de Gortari that indicates that the manufacturing imports that US performs from Mexico integrate a 30% US content. And we have sent to the administration of President Biden and Canada, highlighting the strengthening of the value chains to overcome, or as a region to overcome, as Catherine said, as if we work as allies to have a common front, we can thrive. We want to thank how this renewed USMCA have taken Mexico to the core of the agenda of the President López Obrador agenda. During his campaign, he mentioned the importance of strengthening the work and having more competitive salaries for workers with important labor conditions. And before the USMCA implementation, he carried out a very important labor reform. I was a congresswoman when this reform was approved, and in some way, for the USMCA, we moved to another stage with a very well-drawn roadmap, and also to have a union liberty, and the workers will have all the necessary information for the commitments in the labor agreements. In this sense, USMCA is really important in Article 23 and Annex 23A that will allow to contribute to the efforts of an inclusive development, thanks to the crucial pillars that are the improvement of labor conditions and better salaries. We have worked hand in hand with the private sector and workers, women and men, that will be ready to carry out implementation and to receive the benefits of the reform. Also, we have carried out reforms to improve minimum wages and to improve the scheme of profit distribution, and the free trade agreement has been really significant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. That's very helpful, and a lot for us to take from that. So I'd like to turn next to the Honorable Mary Yang, the Canadian Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion, and International Trade. She emigrated from Hong Kong to Canada with her family, so she knows well the importance of international relationships and economic opportunity. She knows well the struggle and eventual success of immigrants to a new country and the important role that economic growth plays in that. Madam Minister, please, a few words from you.
Well, thank you so very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi et toutes et à tous. And buenas tardes a todos. I want to thank you for that good introduction, Ambassador Green. But before I begin, let me just acknowledge that I am joining you from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, and the Wendat peoples. For those of us who are settlers or even immigrants to Canada, it's really important to recognize that Indigenous peoples have always been here and that Canadians have a role to play in reconciliation. And that this work is especially important with the tragic confirmation of hundreds of children whose lives were taken at residential schools. And it's important that we recognize the terrible legacy of residential schools and the role that we all can play in our ongoing reconciliation efforts moving forward. Ambassador Tai, Secretary Cloutier, Catherine, Tatiana, it is wonderful to see you again and to connect after we had a terrific Free Trade Commission meeting. It's really great to be sharing the virtual stage with you. I also want to say a hello to both Ambassador Green and Representative Brady. Hello, nice to see you. And on the eve of the first anniversary of the Canada-US and Mexico agreement, or what we in Canada here like to call the new NAFTA. I want to thank you, Ambassador Green, and to Pat and the entire team at the Wilson Center for bringing us together. In 1993, our countries made history by forging the largest trade agreement with the shared goal of mutual economic prosperity and raising the standards of living for all of our people. Since then, trilateral trade has tripled, fostering innovation and creating jobs and economic growth across North America. Fast forward to the summer of 2017, when our countries first came together to build off this foundation set in 1993 and to prepare the economy for the future with a new NAFTA. And today we're here on the eve of this first anniversary since the agreement came into force, reflecting on lessons learned for that first year and highlighting our top and shared priorities for North American collaboration in the years ahead. This last year has certainly been a difficult year. It's plunged our respective nations into one of the biggest health, social, and economic crises in modern memory. It has showed, though, clearly how essential open trade and integrated supply chains are to support our industries, our workers, our communities through the most difficult of circumstances. From working together on adapting trade mechanisms for critical supplies such as food, medicine, or the raw materials that are used in making PPE or life-saving ventilators, to the equitable flow of goods between our countries and indeed around the world during COVID-19. Our trade relationship is built on long-established, deeply integrated supply chains, networks of workers and businesses that aren't just selling to each other, but we're innovating and we're building together and we're selling to the world. Let me share a couple of examples of what I mean by this. Let's start with Biodefense Indoor Air Protection System. It's a transcontinental partnership between a Houston-based company, Integrated Viral Protection in the United States, Dust Free, a Canadian engineering company in CPR, and Mexico's Instalaciones y Especialidades Metálicas. These three manufacturing companies came together to create an innovative system for ventilators, which traps and eliminates the COVID-19 virus using high heat without affecting air temperature. Another great example is the one that Pat highlighted earlier with the proposed landmark deal between Kansas City Southern and CN Rail, a deal that has the potential to generate economic growth on both sides of our shared border with the United States. This is the power of the new NAFTA in action. The reliability and stability of our trade agreement is what allowed businesses like these ones and their hardworking employees to innovate and adapt through challenging times. Moving forward, our trade relationship will be crucial to supporting them as they recover, grow, create jobs for our shared recovery, strengthening our North American competitiveness. It is clear that the enhancements we made in the new NAFTA are already fostering an environment and opportunities to grow in traditional sectors such as manufacturing, agriculture, natural resources, and are also helping us become market leaders in emerging sectors such as clean technology and sustainable infrastructure through trilateral collaboration. I'll give you another example. Take our Montreal's WSP. It's a world-leading engineering consulting firm that helped the Dell Children's Medical Center in Austin, Texas, become the world's first hospital to earn Platinum LEED accreditation for sustainability. WSP reduced net energy use by 40% by creating a design that optimizes heat recovery, ventilation, lighting, and the use of daylight. By modernizing North American rules of trade and simplifying trade processes, our businesses are better able to meet the most pressing challenges of our time, from the pandemic to climate change. Our renewed commitment to the automobile industry in Usmca is an excellent example of this. By working together under this new agreement, we're incentivizing North American production of zero-emission vehicles and turning our countries into global leaders in the clean energy vehicle market. This is about strengthening our long-term competitiveness, generating sustainable growth, and creating good jobs across our countries. In closing, I would like to underscore something of vital importance. By working hard in each of our countries to implement the new NAFTA, we're sending a strong signal to our people, our businesses, our communities, and our investors. It is a message about our renewed commitment to the trilateral economic partnership, one that protects workers, supports small businesses, creates opportunities for underrepresented groups, and contributes to a more sustainable and inclusive future. And I know as Canada, the United States, and Mexico continue to work together, we will recover from COVID-19. We will lead the world in a greener, safer, and more competitive economic recovery. Thank you so much. Merci. Gracias.
Mr. Eng, thank you so much. And each of you have highlighted some of the great innovations that are at the heart of USMCA. But as we began, this obviously came into force during a challenging time for all three economies, given the pandemic. What steps remain in implementation, and what do you see as the timeline for completing those steps? And if I can begin with you, Ambassador Tai, how do you see implementation and the necessary steps ahead?
Well, thank you so much. And it really is a joy and delight to be reunited with Secretary Cloutier, Minister Ng, again, in two dimensions. We did spend quite a bit of time with each other back in April for the Free Trade Commission. And I want to note at the start of this session that we were very proud to be representing these three countries as women. And I will note that we also take pride in the fact that we not only stuck to the agenda for those 2 days, but we also, I think, finished early for most of our discussion sessions, and we will take credit for that as women as well. Ambassador Green, you ask a great question, and I think it offers me a unique opportunity to talk a little bit about how we are thinking about the USMCA, this particular trade agreement, but also all trade agreements, which is the implementation process is ongoing. Working on this agreement is never going to be finished. And I think that, that's a pretty critical notion that we're really trying to focus on, which is these agreements are about relationships, and relationships are dynamic, just as our global economy is dynamic. And the way that we interact with each other, the mechanisms that we have for cooperation, for building together, but also for managing our frictions, is an ongoing process. So from my perspective, yes, the pandemic has been a real curveball, but we are here for each other. That is the purpose of the USMCA, and we will continue to implement it through its lifetime.
Minister Ng or Secretary Cloutier, do you have anything you'd like to add in terms of the path for implementation? If not, why don't I pick up where we just left off? Because as you said, in many ways, this is a process, not a single agreement. And there's a path ahead, not just in implementation, but in looking for ways to advance trade. As important as this agreement is, and as beneficial as it is, I think we all recognize that the politics of trade are difficult. They're often difficult for domestic constituencies. How do you advance the cause of trade in your own countries, and how do you help to convince Mexicans, Canadians, and Americans that free trade is something that should continue to be pursued? Secretary Cloutier, if I can begin with you, perhaps?
Yes, of course. Well, I think that one of the most important things is how the regionalization and show figures, but also show that not all of us do the same things. We are supplementary. This is one of the most important things where we were able to show our openness. The pandemic has been a great example of we can see how the example of making a decision A or B. For us, what we have done in Mexico is to show with figures, and let me go back to the field. Well, all the agricultural products that we, despite the pandemic, because we maintained people working in the field by respecting the protocols and complying with the terms and labor affairs has been fundamental. And this is part of the producers and workers that when they want to do, they can do it. And we have demonstrated that we were capable of doing this in a respectful way with the agreements we have. So in this way, for us, and this, we discussed this when the voices say that we want to protect ourselves or to close ourselves, but we did the opposite. If we show figures as partners, despite the pandemic, the supply chain and the resilience shown through the supply chains, and not to close the borders and to have synergies to facilitate things, well, this gave results. We were supplementary, as Mary said, with some products, but the pharmaceutical part, the aerospatial part were the spaces where they show the need to demonstrate the strength as a region and having the USMCA as a mechanism to face the pandemic. And we have said this to investors and workers. When we are capable of seeing the great opportunities instead of closing ourselves because we are afraid and we think to protect our own things, we see this in a different way. I want to show you an example. The USMCA in Chapter 23, instead of saying that we were striving this to strengthen the labor reform, but with the ones that have made more progress for historical reasons, like our counterparts, and they were accompanying us by seeing us, and this allowed us, so our workers and companies, to say this is the right path that we should take instead of closing ourselves. And also women and SMEs to export in hard times. So what we have said is that we have a big region where we can strengthen ourselves. Don't be afraid. Fear paralyzes, and we have less oxygen in our head if we have fear. Thank you very much.
Madam Secretary, that phrase, fear paralyzes, I think is an important one for all of us to keep in mind as we take on important challenges. Minister Eng, is there anything that you would like to add?
Well, I would agree with both Catherine and Tatiana. I think that what underscores the opportunities for us is what we do domestically to support our businesses and our workers as best as we can. But what we do here is work collaboratively together to be as competitive as we can in all three of our countries. And I would agree very, very much that it is this evolving ability, that this very good framework in the new NAFTA that provides the conditions for us to keep building on, on making sure that this agreement really does, in fact, help us become the most competitive region in the world through this very opportunity and relationship that we've been working on together. And no doubt I think what we've done is set the course for us to work together even more in the decades to come.
It's great. And again, as we began, we all recognize that this is being implemented during a challenging time economically. What I didn't want to let go by, and I'll ask it as a quick question of all of you, what can we do to help? What can the private sector do to help each of you and all of you in implementation and in moving this forward so that we can realize the promise that is USMCA? Ambassador, perhaps I can start with you, Ambassador Tai.
Sure. Thank you, Ambassador Green. And I liked your previous question so much. I'm just going to tack on a thought there, which is I really want to call people's attention to the fact that the USMCA is probably the most pro-worker agreement out there, and really something that the United States, Mexico, and Canada should be proud of. You know, I take your point about the trade politics being difficult. They have been difficult, but look at USMCA as a high standard agreement just through the lens of I think 89% of House members voted for this agreement, and it was 89 senators, which out of 100 it gives you 89% there as well. That's really I think a transformation of some of our trade politics, and is the reason why I think USMCA really is transformational. Just as the NAFTA started a trajectory of trade agreements for a generation, I think that USMCA is the beginning of the trajectory for a new generation of trade agreements. To your specific question in terms of what the private sector and also what civil society can do, participate. I think one of the lessons that I take, certainly, and the Biden-Harris administration takes from the USMCA and the renegotiation of the NAFTA, is that an inclusive process can lead to a more inclusive outcome. And that means taking the table that we have and building it out, making a really big table. You need to be there, businesses need to be there, civil society needs to be there. And that is really the path that I see for all of us.
Secretary Cloutier.
Me encanta, normalmente la gente.
Normally, people ask, and I want to thank you when you say that how we can help or what can we do. There are several schemes by which we can help. I'm going to what the pandemic showed us and what the new agreement, updated agreement is showing us. We have to move faster to the digitalization, accompanying the SMEs and all the companies that are led by women that I have been hit in all this process. And this is achieved by supply chain. And I always say and request, and I raise my hand, that in these supply chains, we always need to see the rules of origin, the interpretation regarding how they have been implemented and understood. So these supply chains, the rules of origin with the regional content will be made available to the 3 regions and not only to made available to only one group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Minister Eng.
Well, to your question, how the private sector can help, I would agree with Catherine. I mean, what are trade agreements for? They are there to set the right conditions for businesses to do business, but also to ensure that there is prosperity for all people in our economy, that include workers, that include small and medium-sized businesses. They need to include women entrepreneurs, Indigenous entrepreneurs, racialized entrepreneurs. I mean, that's what this framework is here for. I mean, and here we have a modernized agreement that has into the agreement provisions for labor, provisions for the environment, but also chapters, I mean, that Canada fought hard for, that includes small and medium-sized businesses. Trade agreements work when the benefits of trade, when the economic job growth accrue to all people in our, in our respective economies. So I think this is absolutely very, very important that we continue to do our work trilaterally, but we also, have in front of us, how we as in North America be leaders and tackle issues like climate change. I mean, when you look at the rules of origin enhancements under this agreement, it's incentivizing domestic production that's going to create good, well-paying jobs for workers in our countries, in all three of our countries. It's going to drive North American innovation and put high standards in manufacturing. What is so encouraging here is, I mean, you know, in Canada, we see General Motors that actually converted the very first, you know, production of electric vehicles here, a large scale auto plant conversion in this country. I mean, these are going to be the opportunities that I think allow us to be able to work together, and the integration of the supply chain. I'm going to maybe end with a very neat example. I often sort of use this to describe the Canada, US, Mexico relationship, and I describe it in a hamburger. Here's how it goes. You can tell me what kind of hamburger it is, because I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to say whether it's a Canadian hamburger, a Mexican hamburger, or a US hamburger, because the beef starts in Alberta. It gets processed in the United States. You've got bread that's baked from a bakery in Mexico, but it's Canadian wheat. Lettuce from the lettuce bowl that is California, because Catherine told me about that. So I learned that through Catherine. And tomatoes from Mexico. So here you go. You got a trilateral hamburger. This is how connected our economies are at the very basic, but at the much more complex, which of course this agreement gets into, is really how all of us, including the private sector, and I would agree, it is engagement of the private sector and civil society, our workers, our unions. We've got to be able to make this work, and it is about driving North American competitive. It is to deal with issues like forced labor, and the only way we're going to be able to do that, in my view, is for the three countries to keep doing what we have, you know, which those that came before us put this very good agreement together. It has been modernized. It has the support, and there are going to be, you know, there are going to be bumps along the road. But I will also share that this is not my quote either, but bumps are just simply stepping stones to success. So you know what? I think that really sets our relationship, and I'm very encouraged and very optimistic of this relationship between Canada, Mexico, and United States. And I can't think of better women to be working with than Catherine and Tatiana. And she's right. We did finish every single one of those sessions early, and I think I'm going to take credit along with the two of you as women leading this darn thing.
Minister, thank you. You can see that you have done well in politics. Anytime that you can bring a hamburger in the discussion, you know that you capture everybody in the audience. Well done. Thank you to Ambassador Tai, Secretary Cloutier, Minister Eng for joining us today. Thanks for your leadership, getting us to this point, but also as you move forward, please know that we do stand ready to work with you and support you in this very important process. It is now my pleasure, professional and personal, to turn things over to our next speaker. Without the hard work of Ranking Member Kevin Brady and his colleagues, USMCA would not have been ratified. They're part of the 89 that you heard about, moving us forward. I'm going to invite Congressman Brady to make a few brief remarks, and then we'll engage with a very brief discussion with him to talk about Congress's role in implementation and what we see moving forward. Congressman Kevin Brady has represented Texas' 8th Congressional District since 1997. He is currently the ranking member in the House Ways and Means Committee, and he previously chaired the committee. I had the honor of serving with him in Congress, and I can tell you he is not only one of the most eloquent advocates for trade, but he is one of those who knows how to build coalitions both sides of the aisle to advance the importance of trade, supply chains, and making sure that we are taking up the important issues that we are today. Kevin, over to you for a few remarks.
Great. Well, thank you, Ambassador Green, for the kind introduction. It really is terrific to see you. And if you don't take up Pat's offer for that game, I noticed the Houston Texans are coming to Green Bay this August as well.
I'm going to be busy this fall by the sound of it.
By the end of this panel, you certainly will, no question about it. So one, thank you to the Wilson Center for hosting the event today. It really is an honor to be on the stage with so many leaders in trade. And I am a huge admirer of Ambassador Tai, of Secretary Cloutier, and Minister Eng. Their leadership, their smart, tough negotiating, their ability really to find that common ground in complex issues really makes them special. So it is great to be on any type of event with these leaders. And I think what better occasion is there than to come together for the first anniversary of what is such an important bipartisan agreement that benefits all Americans and our trading partners, Mexico and Canada. As you said, Mark, USMCA took effect during a terrible pandemic. And I want to talk a little about how we arrived at USMCA, what this new agreement promises for the future. Because today, as we all rebuild our economies, we are better positioned to succeed because of this agreement. I am a Texan and got involved in trade at the mentorship of George H.W. Bush and Secretary James Baker. And I know in October of 1992, President Bush joined leaders from Mexico and Canada in San Antonio to initial the original NAFTA agreement. And there he said NAFTA is a turning point in the history of our three countries. It truly was. And in its time, NAFTA was, I think, extremely beneficial. The United States, certainly to my home of Texas, state of Texas, to our neighbors in Canada and Mexico. But it did need updating and modernizing. We need to care for it, invest in it, upgrade it, and make it work for the 21st century. We achieved that together. When President Trump signed the Implementation Act, he said, this is a cutting edge, state-of-the-art agreement, protects, defends, and serves the great people of our country. And he's right. This is a standard for 21st century trade agreements. It builds on the good provisions of NAFTA, zero tariffs on all U.S. goods exported to Mexico, and nearly all of them exported to Canada. This agreement opens new markets for the U.S. in dairy, wine, and poultry. It locks in key reforms in energy and telecommunications in a big way. I think it strengthens our partnership against distortions caused by major non-market economies like China. I think it includes vastly improved IP protections for copyrights, trademarks, and trade secrets, along with innovative provisions to ensure the enforcement of IP rights, both at the national borders and online. The agreement on labor practices in North America, I believe, raises standards, labor standards around the world. And the fact that it's fully enforceable in the environmental chapter as well means a cleaner, healthier planet. I really appreciate USMCA cuts red tapes for small businesses to buy and sell throughout North America, key for all of us. Removes costs on low value shipments, again, important for our small businesses. Requires regular consultation among our governments on how we can resolve issues that affect our Main Street businesses. Negotiating this agreement was difficult, but it was only the first step. Implementing and enforcing it will continue, as you've said, long into the future. So the agreement lives up to our high expectations. And so I turn to the promise of tomorrow. Will we always agree? No. That's why USMCA has, I think, an effective dispute settlement system to provide timely and fair resolutions. The state-to-state dispute settlement system under NAFTA was broken by allowing any party to block the formation of dispute panels. This shouldn't be optional. USMCA fixed that. Now panels will be appointed. The process has been approved to require timely outcomes, and this upgrade, perhaps most importantly, applies to all aspects of the agreement. I know I intend to work closely with Ambassador Tai to ensure the United States uses this when appropriate. And I think just because the attitude and the approach that all three of our trade leaders in the respective countries bring to the table, I think the success of this trade partnership for all parties depends on how effectively we protect our rights and work through these disputes. I know we have raised, obviously, from the U.S. Approach, the treatment of dairy products in Canada, biotech, ag products, and investors in energy in Mexico. Our partners have issues to raise as well. And I think while there are challenges, I'm optimistic because of this agreement, we can work through this in a way that affirms rigorous enforcement uh, but in a way that moves all three countries forward. Ambassador Tai has shown she finds these tools useful. I'm confident Minister Ng and Secretary Cloutier also will do so when they believe it's appropriate. And at the end of the day, the 21st century upgrades reduce friction in trade. We are, I believe, able now better to work out our differences for workers, farmers, ranchers, manufacturers, and service providers. And I think it'll boost investment and trade within North America, exactly as we work to recover from our economy. So perfect timing on implementation of this agreement. I know all of us, Mark, want to help those who were hit hardest by the pandemic return our neighbors and communities and families to prosperity and good health as quickly as we can. To do that, I think USMCA helps us provide stronger, more resilient supply chains. More resources in North America mean we can buy and produce more goods, especially key crucial medical products, medicines, supplies, and the ingredients to produce them. Our economy and I think our health depend on our medical independence from China in these key areas. I think we all benefit from increased regional production of medical and pharmaceutical products. Our crucial supply chains can be anchored in North America, running through our trading partners, foremost with Canada and Mexico. I also think, as was mentioned by our trade leaders, the passage of USMCA, and I credit to my counterpart, Chairman Richie Neal, for a terrific work and leadership here in the House, but it laid the foundation for future bipartisan trade legislation. We are in some ways already building on this blueprint, but I hope we do more. And I know our counterparts in Canada are doing the same throughout the world. I will tell you, I am confident Ambassador Tai, who is a skilled and strong negotiator, will work with lawmakers in Congress to advance our leadership in trade. She knows what it takes: bipartisanship, intense consultation and transparency. And after the historic bipartisan support, Mark, frankly, one I didn't think I'd live to see in trade, and I was very encouraged by this. I just am convinced we can work together to do more. And this will help us exit the pandemic crisis, frankly, stronger than we entered it. We do know, though, there is aggressive global competition for ag, goods, services, markets. When we compete on a level playing field, we win customers around the world. And together, because of this partnership, we can still win when these trade challenges aren't fair, whether from China or elsewhere. We have to, as partners, continue to address massive unfair subsidies, dumping, IP theft, forced technology transfers, unscientific barriers to ag products, protectionist restrictions on data transfer, so key to the future, and then localization measures of all sorts. These are all the challenges globally. I'm convinced USMCA shows us a better way with market principles, high standards, innovation and fair competition, and strong labor standards. I think USMCA challenges the world to embrace the future rather than a protectionist, isolationist past. So I'm convinced our modernized and deepened partnership will allow us to compete and win. I will continue to urge the Biden administration to lead on trade in this world with the bold new trade agreements throughout the world that will set the standard and enhance trade going forward. I will close with this. I believe the future is bright under USMCA. 1 year is an important milestone to celebrate. I'm looking to so many more in ways that will advance, prosperity and opportunity for our three countries. With that, Ambassador, thank you again for having me here today.
Thank you, Kevin, and a wonderful optimistic note. And I think in some ways you answered the question I was going to ask, and that's whether or not the challenges presented by the pandemic and the exposure that it brought about in some of our critical supply chains sort of made the case for the importance of nearshoring and USMCA. I'll let you address that. I know your time is short, but let me take one step further. What are the prospects for taking USMCA and going a little bit south and not staying with North America, but heading south from there? What do you think?
Yeah, so a couple points. One, I think the opportunities for resilient, reliable supply chains, especially the lessons learned from COVID, they are right there in front of us. And we'd be fools not to take advantage of the partnerships we already have through USMCA and NAFTA to create those resilient supply chain. It's a great opportunity for us. Secondly, you may recall I was the point person for President Bush on the Central America Free Trade Agreement, as well as work with Colombia and others. And I just believe there's great opportunities here. I have, worried a bit about the leftward turn from many of the countries that we've developed trade relationships. I would like closer ones with them. I think to your point that you're trying to make is, are there opportunities here in our hemisphere that are due a reset or a re-engagement? I think the answer to that is not yes, but heck yes. And I would look forward to working with our trade partners to do that. And I think there is support for that in Congress as well.
Kevin, thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your leadership. You still have a lot of work ahead of you. We will miss you, but we'll save that conversation for another time. I want to thank you. I want to thank all of our distinguished panelists for their participation today. It's been an excellent conversation and an uplifting one. I'm sure we've all come away with a deeper understanding of the impact and importance of USMCA, and again, I think what the possibilities are going forward. Before we close, I would like to turn it over to Ambassador Tony Wayne to provide a brief overview of the progress made by our USMCA working group, which he so ably chairs, and our plans for the coming year. Tony, over to you.
Thanks very much, Mark, and thanks to everybody who participated today. As Ambassador Green mentioned at the start, we've been very active over the past year. We held over 20 different events, public and private discussions of different aspects of USMCA and related North America cooperation. We put out about 20 papers also, which you can find on the websites of the Mexico and Canada Institutes here at the Wilson Center. I encourage you to visit them. And we intend to go forward over this next year with a continued series of public and private meetings. And one of the things we try to do is have a series of private discussions, which are off the record, not for attribution, and have participants from all three countries, from the private sector, from government, and civil society, so people can frankly talk through some of the difficult issues and some of the important opportunities. And then we complement that by having public discussions, putting out public papers that are open to a much broader audience. But we look forward to all of you participating as we go forward, and please let us know if you are interested in participating. I might just mention three of the things that came out of all these meetings, sort of constants that cut across all the discussions. One is the importance of the certainty provided by USMCA and the importance from stakeholders. They really want to see this agreement implemented and enforced going forward. Of course, they'd like to see problems solved through dialogue, but if that's not possible, they want people to use the dispute settlement mechanisms that exist and to see how they work. Secondly, there was a constant theme that as we are moving forward, it is really important to have a dialogue between governments and stakeholders. Certainly that will happen between individual governments and their own stakeholders in their own countries. But the people we talked with said there's a real enriching possibility if you can do this in the trilateral context, or if it's a question of borders and the northern or southern borders, that there's a lot that can be gained from inviting stakeholders to participate. You build support for the process and you get really good ideas. And the third was a comment that for sure, trade ministers are in charge of this and they're implementing USMCA. But when we start trying to find solutions to some of these broader problems, it really is only going to be done well if other agencies get involved by all three governments. Yeah, for example, looking at borders, the trade ministries are not in charge of borders. You need to have others involved, and that's true in all of these areas. So there was really a stress on having a whole of government approach. And then particularly as the three countries start looking at the competitiveness issues. And a lot of people are very excited about this part of USMCA, looking forward. And as the world changes, as technology changes, as several of our ministers said, you have to change a little bit the way you're applying this agreement and think about it in different ways. And that's going to take other agencies, and it's even going to take direction from the heads of government in all three countries. So there was enthusiasm for getting back to an occasional North American Leaders Summit also to help set priorities. So there's a lot to do going forward. We intend to be really active. We look forward to hearing from you as we do so, and to have you participate with us. So let us know your thoughts. Thank you for being with us today. And we look forward now to USMCA really taking off in this second year. And a reminder that we're going to start reviewing the progress in 5 years. That's one of the neat things about USMCA. There's a review process built in. So we need to get busy and think about how things are working. Thank you very much and all the best.